Okay, this PowerPoint is focusing on the external, regarding external pressures on businesses. This is AS90844, and this one is looking at trade unions and employer associations. So we're going to understand the role of a trade union and explain how influential they can be upon large businesses. So what trade unions are, they are an organisation um, of uh, members of the workforce or the employees of a particular organisation or a particular industry. They are there to represent the interests, so therefore to readdress the power imbalance between management and employees. And the whole idea is the employees get together to form this trade union, this organisation, and therefore they can negotiate regarding specific um, areas in the workplace. So the right to useful employment is one. The right to be able to join and create a trade union. Um, the right to use collective bargaining. So that's the whole idea of having everyone together and speaking of one voice. So that join all the workers together. So common ones we can see PPTA for teachers, PSA is the Public Service Association. They also have a right to take industrial action or take something, some sort of action which is going to disrupt the process of the organisation, and therefore, from a management point of view, this is the power that they have. Now, the advantages and disadvantages of a trade union. First off, as we can see from our advantages, one person speaks for the whole group. So, it, and these people that speak for the whole group would very often be, as it says down the bottom here, trained negotiators, trained speakers, trained communicators. So one person speaks for everyone, and that takes away that whole problem of individual employees having to approach their managers um, to ask or broach difficult topics of conversation in the workplace for them. So that one person acts as that. Um, because of this, we also have better relationship between employees and the companies and the management. This is basically because that power imbalance between managers talking to the employees is now they're all on a level footing because managers understand the power that employees have collectively, and employees obviously will always understand the boss is the boss. So therefore, that does allow for a better working relationship. Now, on the downside, sometimes the union, oh, excuse me, sometimes the union can be too powerful, okay, and can and history has shown in the past the times when unions have been too powerful and um, and a lot of industrial action has taken place, reducing productivity. Because of this as well, you can also have a reduction in motivation, particularly if the person who's speaking for the whole group isn't necessarily on an individual level something that the individual employee agrees with. Um, so in a way, they are forced to act on on what the majority wish to do. However, for individuals, this might not always be the case, and that may reduce motivation. From an organisation's point of view, it may increase labour costs. Obviously, one of the big things that trade unions will argue about or negotiate on is wages. So obviously, in this way, you can say that labour costs aren't necessarily going to go down. Also, as well, it could be that there are a limited trade unions limit the way in which work is carried out, which might be less productive, less efficient, and overall increasing the labour costs. So, as an influence, trade unions are incredibly influential. Okay, they basically do represent the rights of the most essential asset in an organisation, and that is the workforce. They can stop workers from working. They can reduce productivity. They can reduce efficiency through the different actions that they take. So, from this point of view, it's very, very important that managers and organisations recognise the power of the unions, the ability of the unions, and rather than fight with the unions, work with the unions on negotiation and consultation on these issues. And the key thing to it is that it's ongoing. It's not just when something flares up. It's an ongoing conversation that they're having, so people are always aware of how these issues are developing in the workplace. Now, we often hear on the news about when trade unions are going into action and they ask their members to do something which limits the productivity of the organisation, and it tends to be very negative press that happens. However, what they can do on a drastic scale is the most common thing is strikes. Okay, so it's call all members out. You're not going to go to work, so therefore there's no production. You get particularly bad publicity because of this. There's a bad relationship between staff and managers. When they're on strike, what they also may do is picket. So that literally means they wait outside the front of the company, and anyone who crosses that line to go into work, well, they will get negative comments towards them, hostility. So it's trying to deter people to go into work. And this is the real unpleasant side of this, because it can lead to violence and things like that. On a less drastic note, really, when we're looking at the drastic stuff, this is the very, very the last, when every other avenue has been exhausted. Every other method has been tried and it's not working. They're still not coming to agreement. Then we get strikes and picketing. However, on a less drastic note, there could be a ban on overtime. There could be work to rule, where literally workers are totally completing everything that's in their contract and nothing else. They may choose to do their work very slow, and they might just generally choose to not cooperate. So these tends to be the more the lesser actions, which may be just as effective. On the flip side, to readdress that balance so that the trade unions don't have too much power, we also have employer associations. However, these organisations aren't possibly so much to do with workplace issues and debating with the trade unions. But what they are is they're there as a source of networking and ways of looking after the businesses and the management. Okay, in a way, it does balance the union power, but as mentioned before, it's not always something that they directly. So if the trade unions are asking, bringing an issue to the table, it doesn't mean that the employer associations rep are there as well. Usually, trade unions talk directly with management in that specific organisation. However, it has been known. So what they tend to basically do, employer associations, is get together and talk about how productivity can be increased, not necessarily focusing on employee relations. So they do provide advice and guidance to businesses and management. And if they do wish to do this one, they can also act on industrial action. So the sort of thing that they do, close supervision of employees, they can freeze the pay. So that means that pay rises aren't given. They can actually enforce a lockout. They could even close the company if this is the action that they think is the most effective. There's a recent case of Qantas not so long ago where this was actually acted out on the employer's behalf. So some of the questions to think about: how do our organisations adapt to the power of trade unions? It's a lot with ongoing negotiation and consultation. And how do they ensure that their actions don't provoke industrial action? So a little bit more on this one. There's a blend space I'll put up on Moodle, which may help you on this issue.